Unbelievable stories of reincarnation worldwide. Although there is still no specific answer to the phenomenon of reincarnation, the true and seemingly incredible stories have left scientists scratching their heads. Young Cameron Macaulay from Glasgow, UK, often sends shivers down his mother's spine by drawing pictures of a white house by the Barra coast and claiming it's where he lived in a past life. Norma, Cameron's mother, mentioned that since Cameron could speak, he always tried to recount his childhood stories on the island of Barra and about his former relatives, describing a life filled with laughter rather than the dullness of the present. Cameron even vividly described details of his old house with 3 bathrooms, his late father, Shane Robertson, and his cheerful mother. He often cried and demanded to go home to visit his parents. But partly due to Cameron's storytelling and partly due to financial constraints, Norma couldn't fulfill his requests immediately. It wasn't until February 2006, with the sponsorship of a television channel, that Cameron and his mother, along with Dr. Jim Tucker, a specialist in unusual reincarnation cases, traveled to the island of Barra. Upon arrival, Cameron immediately recognized the familiar house from afar. Indeed, the house had 3 bathrooms just as Cameron had described, and its owners were the Robertsons. However, since the passing of the elder Robertson, the family had moved elsewhere. Unlike Cameron being reincarnated to a distant place, Rakesh from India was reincarnated into his very own younger brother. At the age of 13, Rakesh, the son of Mr. Chaudhary, fell into a coma after an accident on April 29, 2005. Mr. Chaudhary's wife, Mrs. Maniben, was in such agony that she began to hallucinate. She told her husband that Rakesh was standing in front of her and wanted to bid farewell, promising to return if she smiled. After an hour-long conversation between mother and son, the Chaudharys convinced themselves to let their son go. A few minutes later, the hospital called to inform them that Rakesh had passed away. On April 22, 2006, Maniben gave birth to a baby boy and named him Rakesh. Strangely, the baby resembled his deceased elder brother in appearance and personality, even recognizing people Rakesh had never met. Once, when taking baby Rakesh to their hometown, he called out Anneela, his elder brother's friend, and led Anneela to a tree where they used to play. Anneela, who was 15, was a friend of Rakesh's elder brother. This convinced Mr. and Mrs. Chaudhary that God had returned Rakesh to them. Like the Chaudharys, the extreme pain of losing a child and the subsequent joy of having another child made Mrs. Olga Leonachieva from Russia feel that her child had been reincarnated. She always asserted that her firstborn son, who died at the age of 19, had been reincarnated into her newborn daughter because her son, Dmitri, frequently appeared in strange dreams, promising to return one day in the form of a girl. Dmitri was Olga Leonachieva's son from her first husband. Since Olga remarried and had another son, Dmitri often distanced himself from his stepfather and half-brother, even being unfriendly towards children of the same age. Therefore, after graduating from high school, he joined the military and served in the Far East. The harsh military life and frequent beatings led Dmitri into despair, and he deserted 2 years later. He hanged himself in front of the house while his mother and stepfather were out. Olga seemed unable to live and tried to commit suicide twice after her son's mysterious death. 2 years later, on Dmitri's birthday, January 26, 2006, Olga gave birth to a baby girl named Senior, although doctors had predicted her due date to be January 15. What's more, The midwife who helped deliver Senior was the same midwife who had welcomed Dmitri into the world 21 years earlier. Therefore, Olga believed even more strongly that this baby was Dmitri, although Senior didn't share any physical resemblance with her late brother. In Finland, there's an astonishing story of reincarnation. On May 27, 1976, a girl named Taru was born in Helsinki to her parents, Heikki and Iris, being their only child. Taru began to speak when she was just 1 year old. By the time she was 1.5, she refused to be called Taru anymore and told everyone that she should be called Jaska, which was the nickname of Iris's late husband, Jocko, who had died in a car accident in 1973. Iris and Jocko had known each other from an early age, with Jocko being 6 years older than Iris. When Jocko was 18, he told Iris, "One day, I will definitely marry you." They lost touch with each other afterward. As Iris grew up, she married another man and had 3 daughters. Meanwhile, Jocko became the owner of a metal shop after completing his military service. Around 1970, he reunited with Iris and they fell in love again. That year, Iris was 35 years old. Iris decided to divorce her husband, marry Jocko, and start a happy life together. Jocko had a few dogs. He loved nature and flowers, enjoyed hunting and fishing, driving, playing ice hockey, and caring for the disabled in his spare time. Interestingly, he also liked talking to objects, sewing clothes, knitting sweaters, and other things that women were more inclined to do. He occasionally bought clothes for Iris. Due to Jocko's alcohol addiction for a long time before marriage, Iris tried her best to make him drink less after they got married. They hoped to have a child of their own, but they couldn't. On September 13, 1973, Jocko boarded a long-distance bus home, and as he got off the bus, he was hit by it for reasons unknown, initially deemed his fault by the police. However, no alcohol tests were conducted at that time. He was only 44 when he passed away. In Iris's memory, Jocko was tall and thin, standing at 1.88 meters but weighing only 86 kilograms. He was slow and clumsy. More than a year after Jocko's death, Iris married her 3rd husband, Heikki. A year after their marriage, Iris visited Jocko's grave, where she seemed to hear a voice telling her that he would come back to life on May 27 and be her child. Iris didn't take it seriously because she wasn't pregnant, and she didn't want it, being 40 years old. However, in October, she became pregnant, and on May 27 of the following year, Taru was born. After being born, Taru mentioned Jocko's life many times from 1.5 to 5 years old. She told her mother that she'd had been hit by a bus. One day, when she was 3.5, she said to Iris, "Mom, you're not my mom, you don't know that I was run over by a wheel." "Why did I have to choose you as my mom?" When asked how she left, whether as a boy or a girl, she answered, "Of course, as a boy, a big boy." Another time, Taru said, "I was taken to the hospital, but I was dead at that time." Taru once said, "You don't have to be afraid of death, because I have died many times. I used to have a mother in Germany named Senior." Taru could easily recognize Jocko's life. When playing with Jocko's toy car, Taru said, "I used to play with it." Perhaps influenced by her past life, Taru was very afraid of buses, trucks, and large cars. When walking with her mother, if a large vehicle passed by, she had to ask her mother to pick her up. Teru also liked playing with toys, especially with boys. When playing games, she insisted on not playing the role of a girl but saying, "I'm a boy." Like Jocko, Teru was slow and clumsy. As she grew up, she was tall and thin. For her parents, Teru was more attached to her mother, often calling her by name, sometimes as Mom. She didn't show a clear liking for her father. She had never called him Dad, and she told her mother, "He can leave this house, and we can live without him. He's just passing through this house." Teru's attitude hurt Heiki's heart and made his relationship with Iris a bit smoother. Although they didn't formally divorce, they realized that distance could make life more harmonious. As a result, they lived in different houses in winter and in rural cabins in summer. Teru was not interested in studying, dropped out at the age of 15, and then became a taxi driver. She rarely wore dresses and never wore any fancy clothes. In 1998, at the age of 22, Teru married an interior decorator. Her relationship with her father also softened, and she learned to take care of him. In the late Edo period of early 19th century Japan, there was a reincarnation story that not only shook the Japanese populace but also spread widely among the aristocracy. By the end of the 19th century, this story had even reached foreign shores. It was the tale of the reincarnation of a boy named Katsugoro. On the 12th of October in the 12th year of the Edo cultural era, 1815, a farming family in Toma Nakono village, now Higoshi Nakono, Hashioji City, Tokyo, welcomed a baby boy named Katsugoro. From a young age, Katsugoro was lively and adorable. One day in November of the 5th year of Bunsei, 1822, while playing with his older brother Otojiro and his sister Minoru, Katsugoro asked a question that had never been heard before. "Brother, sister, what family were you from before coming to this house?" Otojiro replied, I don't know about that." Minoru said, "That's a very strange question." How could Katsugoro know? Katsugoro responded, "I know. I was Fujikura, born in Hodokubo village, and I died from smallpox when I was 6. Minoru exclaimed, "You're just making things up." "I'll tell Mom about this." Katsugoro, surprised that his siblings knew nothing about it, tearfully begged Minoru not to tell their mother. "Please don't tell Mom, I beg you. I'll do whatever you say." From then on, Katsugoro obediently followed whatever Minoru said. Their attentive mother also noticed this change. By mid-December, she told her husband Genzo that there seemed to be a secret between Minoru and Katsugoro. Genzo then called Katsugoro and reassured him, "We won't scold you. Whatever it is, just tell us." Katsugoro recounted his past life memories. Before, he was Fujikura, born in Hodokubo village, Toma district, now Hodokubo, Hino City, Tokyo, to parents named Heisei and Sakusei. His father asked, "Is this true?" Katsugoro replied, "Yes, it is." His father said, "Don't tell this to anyone." Katsugoro agreed, "I understand." Suddenly hearing such an unbelievable story, his parents were filled with doubt and disbelief. Every night, Katsugoro slept with his grandmother and recounted the details of Fujikura's transition into Katsugoro when Fujikura was 6 years old and died of illness. During his funeral, he was placed in a wooden coffin and taken to the cemetery on the mountain for burial. When the wooden coffin was buried, there was a sudden thud sound, and at that moment his soul flew out, flying towards his home. Upon returning home, he saw his parents talking. He could hear them clearly, saw his mother crying bitterly, and tried to talk to her, but she couldn't hear him at all. Eventually, Fujikura noticed an old man with a gray beard, wearing a black kimono, waving at him. The old man carried him across rivers and mountains, through distant lands, in a gloomy atmosphere, neither cold nor hot, always dim like twilight, and he never felt hungry. 2 types of red and yellow flowers bloomed on the ground, and if he picked them, it would make a black crow scream angrily. Fujikura heard distant chanting, so he flew back home, but no one in the house noticed him. Seeing a bowl of hot red bean soup on the altar, it looked very delicious. In the other world, it seemed like only a few days had passed, but the old man said it had been 3 years and now he could be reincarnated. The old man took Fujikura to a house behind a plum tree in Nikono village, which is Katsugoro's current home. He obediently followed the old man into the house, hiding behind the kitchen stove first, listening to his parents discussing wanting to go to Edo to work to improve their family's living conditions. Edo was the capital, present-day Tokyo, about 40 kilometers from Nikono and Hodokubo villages, a day's walk away. At this moment, Fujikura's soul quickly entered his mother's womb and was later born as Katsugoro. Seeking his past life relatives, Katsugoro tearfully begged his grandmother to take him to Hodokubo village to see. He said, "I want to visit my father's grave." His grandmother, moved by Katsugoro's earnest request, asked around if anyone knew Heise in Hodokubo village. Eventually, someone told her that there was indeed such a person in Hodokubo village, but Heise had passed away, and he had a little son named Fujikura who was very cute but died of smallpox. The story of Katsugoro being the reincarnated child spread throughout the village, and many people even came to see him, giving him the nickname the Little Monk of Hodokubo village. Katsugoro's mother began to trust in Katsugoro's reincarnation because he knew about her secret conversations with her husband about going to Tokyo to work, conversations that no one else knew about, especially since Katsugoro hadn't been born yet. On the 20th of January in the 6th year of Bunsei, 1823, Katsugoro's grandmother took him to Hodokubo village to find Fujikura's house, with Katsugoro guiding her the whole way. Although Hodokubo and Nikono villages were close, only 5 kilometers apart, they had to cross a desolate mountain. Despite being 8 years old, Katsugoro had never been to this place before, yet he knew the way perfectly and led his grandmother through Hodokubo village, which was very familiar to him. Pointing at a house, his grandmother asked, "Is it this house?" "No, a little further ahead." Katsugoro replied, "It's this house." In front of Katsugoro's house, there were 6 stone statues of Ksutagaba Bodhisattva, where Katsugoro and other children used to play. Katsugoro led his grandmother into a farmer's house where Fujikura's mother, Shizuka, and stepfather, Hanshiru, were at home. When Fujikura was 2 years old, his biological father passed away, and his mother remarried. Hanshiru loved him dearly. Both Shizuka and Hanshiru were amazed to see Katsugoro, saying he resembled Fujikura a lot. Katsugoro was 8 years old at that time, and Fujikura had died at 6. It felt like Fujikura had returned. Although it was Katsugoro's first time visiting this place, everything inside the house felt very familiar to him. He knew exactly where everything was placed. Katsugoro mentioned that there wasn't that tree in front of the tobacco shop gate across the street before. Shizuka and Hanshiru were.